All right. Well, in the interest of time, we're going to go ahead and get our second session started. So once again, welcome to Networking into Sports, Authentically, Bravely, and Competently. And I'm Ron Roberts Jr., for those of you who don't know me. And so we, as I mentioned to you earlier, we had a first session, a really strong first session. And so looking to have a second session that's going to be equally as valuable, if not more. And so this is all about us bringing in industry professionals to share their insights and lessons learned and advice about how to network into sports. And so as we go through, I'll share questions with the professionals, but I'm really looking for the bulk of the time to be devoted to you as students or recent graduates to be able to share any questions you have about how to effectively network into sports. And so before we bring in our industry professionals, I wanted to go through a few slides and just to give my 2 cents about what it means to network effectively. So just real quick, in terms of the goals of the session are to, number one, address questions from college students and recent graduates on how to effectively network into sports. And then, as I mentioned in my earlier session, networking seems to be one of these mysterious things that people hear that you should do, but they really don't know how to do it. Secondly, to inspire college students and recent graduates to network with sports industry professionals as their true selves or authentically, with courage or bravely, and in the proper way, competently. So who I am, so I am a former college career advisor, spent a number of years working at the University of Southern California. And then I eventually transitioned into the world of corporate recruiting, and I've been doing that for the last 12 or 13 years. Outside of my day job, I'm a career and college planning partner, so it's my calling, and I'm very passionate about helping college and high school students to successfully transition into the careers that they're interested in. And then finally, I am a sports career event organizer and moderator. I did quite a bit of this when I was at USC. And so last year, in the midst of the pandemic, I was able to resume this. And so definitely very excited about it. So sessions 2 agenda. So in just a moment, we'll start the networking VBCs, and at 1 o'clock, we're going to start our first module, networking authentically, and we'll bring 3 individuals in to talk about that and other things around networking. And then 1:30 to 2 o'clock, our theme is going to be networking bravely. And then finally, we're going to end with our third module, networking competently, from 2 p.m. to 2:30. So some housekeeping items. Number one, we're going to ask you, if you're not speaking, to go ahead and mute your microphone. And then at 1 o'clock, when we first bring in our first group of individuals, I'm going to ask you to, our industry professionals, I'm going to ask you to turn off your video option. We want the spotlight to be on our industry professionals. And then finally, use the chat function for questions or comments. So I'm going to encourage you to fill up the chat with all the questions you have for our industry professionals around networking, and just any comments or thoughts related to what you're hearing. And then finally, we're going to ask you to share about your experience in today's event on social media if you're so inclined. So the hashtag is hashtag sports networking ABC. So feel free to get on the Instagram or Twitter or wherever you reside social media wise to be able to share your reflections on what you're hearing from today's event. All right, so let's do the networking ABC. So we'll have just about 2 minutes. So we're gonna go through this pretty quickly so we can get our speakers started on time. So a couple of definitions about networking. The textbook definition is the exchange of information or services among individuals, groups, or institutions, specifically the cultivation of productive relationships for employment or business, the Merriam-Webster Dictionary, and then establishing and developing relationships that are mutually beneficial, the Ron Roberts Jr. Dictionary. So just my definition of networking, I definitely think it should be very mutually beneficial. All right, so what concerns do you have about networking? So once again, networking is one of these concepts that we talk a lot about, and it's sort of mystifying to a lot of folks. And it's also something that people know they should be doing, but they are actually not quite sure how to do it, or they're scared to do it. So I wanted to ask you, if you could just put in the chat just real quick, what concerns do you have about networking? So feel free to go ahead and put that in the chat, and we'll give you a moment to do that. And people have all sorts of reasons as to why they're not doing more networking when they know that's probably something that they should do. So feel free to share any thoughts, any concerns you have about networking. And then while you're doing that, I'm also going to ask you to share what advice you've heard about networking. So whether the advice has come from career services professionals, professors, mentors, or people in the industry, what advice have you heard about networking? And so go ahead and feel free to put that in the chat. And as that's happening, I'm going to go ahead and read what people are sharing about concerns about networking. So you want to make sure you sound confident. Yes, you want to make sure that you know what you sound like you know what you're talking about. Bothering people who have busy schedules. So this is a big one. Yeah, they're so busy, and I feel uncomfortable asking them for their time. Feeling nervous about reaching out to new people. Yes, that's definitely a good one. How to connect to a specific position, not from USC alumni. Okay. And how to offer value to individuals I'm attempting to network. Yeah. So very good stuff. All right. So any advice that you've heard about networking, how it should be done? Now, once again, whether it comes from career services professionals or professors or mentors or even people in the industry. All right. So yeah, be brave, just reach out. Okay, good. Work around your schedules. Yep, terrific. Yeah, let's see if we have anything else before we move on. Okay, that's good. So let's go ahead and get into this a little bit more. So my first tip is to, number one, know your value. You, first of all, know your value, believe that you have value, but understand how you can offer value. So I listened to your 6 buckets in which you can offer value to people that you network with. So number one, your education. So we understand that you don't know everything, and that's okay. But you are learning how to learn, and you are learning something. Number two, your abilities or your skills. So what you're good at doing, whether it comes naturally to you or through some sort of training, your knowledge. And so as I mentioned to the first group in the first session is that everyone knows something, and you know some things that other people don't know. So your unique body of knowledge can add value to people. Your personality. So whether your personality is um, calm or ambitious or conscientious or friendly, your personality traits can add value to others. And then your experiences. So much like your knowledge, your experiences are unique. So we are each shaped by a collection of experiences, whether those experiences have been positive for us or have been negative, they've shaped who we are. And so you can certainly add value through what you have become and learn through your experiences. And then finally, your value system. So what's important to you, whether it's your friends or family or faith or community or success or money. If your values are in alignment with that of others, then you can certainly add value. So next, view networking simply as relationship building. Think of how you develop friendships. So when you're thinking about connecting with someone in the industry or just a professional in general, think about how you go about developing friendships. And so there's certain patterns that we follow. And so don't see it as something that's really mystical, but think about how you develop your friendships and apply those same types of principles. See, networking is something that's mutually beneficial to you and the other party. And I call that benevolent networking. And so networking is not just about you. It's not just what's in it for you, but it's also what's in it for the other person. So be thinking about how you can add benefit, if possible, to the person that you're networking with. Next, show genuine interest in the people that you're networking with. Actively listen. And people don't really do a lot of this. And so oftentimes they're talking about themselves or they're thinking about what they're going to say when the other person's talking. So really try to be very interested in what the person is saying and to listen, and you'll find all kinds of clues that can lead to further questions or just other topics that you may want to discuss with this person. And then finally, have a 30-second commercial or elevated speech prepared. I don't have time to get into this, but certainly go to your career center, perhaps your professors or even mentors can help you to craft a pitch that you can share at a networking event. All right, so even more tips, be aware of your body language. So oftentimes our body language speaks volumes, it speaks louder than what we're saying. And so you want to be careful about what kind of eye contact you're showing, even your handshake when we go back to actually networking live, your facial expressions, but just be aware of those signals that you're communicating with your body. Ask for business cards and actually use them. And I found in my experience, that students would get business cards, but they don't always use them. So when someone gives you their business card, they're giving you permission to reach out to them. Say thank you. That goes without saying. Definitely let the person know that you appreciate their time, the information that's shared, and to stay in touch with your contacts and continue to look for ways to benefit them too. So there's a necessity, I think, to staying in contact with people so that you can be effectively networking, but there's also an art to it. And so if you don't know how to do it, certainly ask, once again, your mentors, professors, people at the Career Center, how you can successfully, strategically stay in touch with the people that you meet. All right, so lots and lots of opportunities to network. So whether it's in your classes or career fairs or social media, obviously, through internships. And so lots of opportunities to network. So definitely should be doing it. LinkedIn is a great professional networking platform. And so if you're not on LinkedIn, I definitely encourage you to figure out how to do it. There are lots of people out there that you can connect with. And LinkedIn has some pretty good tools that you can use to create a good impression of yourself and really showcase, what you're all about. And then informational interviewing, and I wish I had more time to talk about this, but this is basically spending 20 or 30 minutes talking with someone who's doing the kind of work that you want to do, or perhaps working where you want to work. And so just picking their brain. So how did you get into your job? What do you like about your job or your company? What are some of the challenges? Where do you see your business going? What classes did you take in college that really helped you to get to where you are? What skills or traits are necessary for success in your job? And you can benefit so many different ways. You get insight that you wouldn't get by reading about a company or individual on the web. You will gain potential industry contacts and also potentially internships with jobs. So there's no guarantee that by having a conversation with somebody that you're going to get an internship or job opportunity, but it has happened. And so you just want to present yourself as well as you can, and you never know what opportunities may come your way. And so my final tip is to be visible and vocal. And I can't stress this enough. And some of us are shy and more reserved than others. And so it's a little bit more intimidating for us to get out there. And so in order for you to get opportunities, in order for you to really grow in your career, you really want to learn how to figure out how to be visible and vocal. Okay, so you want people to know who you are. You can work as hard as you want to, but if people don't know your value, it's not going to do you as much good. And so you want to be able to be in a room and let people know that you're in a room. You don't have to do it the way your outgoing friend does, but find your way to let people know that you're there and the value that you can offer. And so my encouragement to students oftentimes is when you're in sessions like this, put a question in the chat, share a thought, but contribute to the discussion. That's one way that you can let people know that you're there. But if you don't know, find a mentor, talk to career services or other people that are invested in your success to find out how you can be more visible and vocal. All right, so we're going to get into the really good stuff now. So our first module, the first of our 3 modules, is called Networking Authentically. And so I am going to introduce our industry guest. And once I do that, I'm going to give my 2 cents about what it means to network authentically. And then I'm going to invite our guests to be able to respond to that or to share anything else they think you should know about networking. So first, I guess I'm going to introduce her, Celeste Gehring. She's the owner of Visionary Building, and I love that title, Celeste. And she's also a former Fox Sports executive. So hello, Celeste, and welcome. Okay, she may have jumped off. She was on earlier, so I'm sure Celeste will jump back on. And then next we have Joe Boots, who is a group sales account executive from the Los Angeles Lakers. Joe, I got your last name right, I'm hoping.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, John.
Certainly. So Joe, thank you for joining us and welcome. And the last but not least, we have Nancy Atufan. Nancy, I'm going to butcher your name. I had it down. Atufanwa, please feel free to correct me, but she's the director of marketing for USA Water Polo. And Nancy was involved in our conference a few months ago. So Nancy, good to see you again. And thank you for joining us. All right, so let me talk just a little bit about what I think it means to network authentically. So, or as your true self. And so definition of authentically is not false or copied, genuine and real, representing one's true nature or beliefs, true to oneself or to the person identified. So definition of authentic. So some quick thoughts from me is number 1, trust that your authentic self has enough value for people to want to connect with you. And so sometimes people feel that in order for people to really want to connect with me, I have to come across a certain way. I have to present myself like somebody else and not necessarily who I really am. And so I just want to encourage you to trust that your authentic self, if presented appropriately, will be good enough for people to want to connect with you. Secondly, other people need what you can uniquely bring to the table. So your perspectives, your experiences, your knowledge, skills, and so forth, people need that. We need diversity of perspective. And so do not rob others of the value that only you can bring. So if I'm reserved, I'm shy, and I really don't want to reach out, I get it, but just keep in mind that you're actually robbing other people of another perspective that they probably really need to hear and of the value that only you can offer. So you want to be sure, keep that in mind. And then finally, be yourself, but be your best self. So we want you to be authentic. We want you to be true to who you are, but we want you to bring, forward. And because some people feel like, okay, I'm going to be who I am, let the hair down. And that's not necessarily what we're suggesting. So be who you are, but be your best self. And so I'm going to ask you to use the chat function to share any questions or thoughts that you may have about networking authentically. So we're here, this event is all about answering your questions about networking. So feel free to put any questions or thoughts you have in the chat about networking authentically. So I see that we have Celeste. I think Celeste has come on. So Celeste, I thank you for joining us and welcome. So I am going to, you guys bear for one moment, I realize here that I apologize. I think I put the wrong slide here. So bear for one moment here. Okay, so ignore what's on the left. My apologies, guys. I didn't update that too. So we'll go back to the previous slide so we can get there right. My apologies on that. So I'm going to ask Celeste, Joe, and Nancy, is there anything that you want to add to what I shared about networking authentically? And if not, we'll go ahead and move on to another question. But anything else to add to that?
Well, I would just say, Ron, I know it's difficult in this time of the COVID era, but hopefully once we get past it, and as convenient as the Zoom method is, I still think it's important for candidates to get in front of decision makers in person to communicate their authentic self. And maybe a little bit later, I can name a couple of ways of doing that. But that's what I want to emphasize today is getting in front of the people who make the decisions to hire people.
Thank you, Joe. Appreciate that. So Nancy, Celeste, anything you want to add to that?
Two things I would probably add is in the outreach when you are networking authentically, make sure it doesn't come across to the person you're sending an email to that it's maybe a template, right? Like I got an email from someone the other day and they said, "You're doing great work in basketball." I don't work in basketball right now. I work in water polo right now. So that's one recommendation. And I think also understand the period that your person might be in when you're reaching out to them. For the last few months, I've been dealing with the Olympics. That's probably a tough time to reach out to ensure your email gets some visibility because of everything else that's going on. So just kind of understand the period that the person you're reaching out to might be in terms of their sports schedule.
Very good. Thank you, Nancy, for sharing that. Celeste, anything to add to that? Oh, okay, I guess, okay, looks like Celeste was on. Okay, good. Yeah, Celeste, yeah. Celeste, are you?
Okay, so sorry, there's a major rainstorm. Hear me?
Okay. Celeste, I think you're, so we'll give you a chance.
She's in the middle of a storm, she said. Okay.
All right. So Celeste, we're hanging with you, but definitely feel free to chime in. Yes, we hear you now.
Okay, sorry. The skies opened up just a minute ago. I'm like, great. No, I just want to say hi to all the students, and Ron, thanks for having me. I think, the really good piece of being authentic is all of you that are students, you come to the table authentically as yourself. Don't play the game, don't get caught up in the minutia and all that stuff. Be you, or you're going to be ending up in a job that you not like and not be happy at all. So having that elevator pitch down, and I'm sure we'll get into all of this later, but knowing that, hey, how you're going to introduce yourself so you don't have that brain noise going.
Celeste, are you there? Yeah, it looks like we're in a minute. Okay, but she said some good things there. So definitely elevating pitch, and just, she just reinforced the notion about showing authentically. All right, so we'll give Celeste a chance to rejoin us. And so I wanted to ask Joe and Nancy, can you just share how networking, relationship building has benefited you in your sports career?
Sure. Actually, I would like to start off with the best example is my brother Bruce, and especially in terms of students. I just want to emphasize the importance to them of possibly investigating student internships while you're attending school. My brother and I both attended Southern Illinois University way back in the day. And at that time, the athletic director at Southern Illinois was the all-time great Chicago Bears running back, Gale Sayers. And somehow my brother was able to become an intern in the athletic department at Southern Illinois, where he actually became Gale Sayers' kind of assistant, personal assistant and gopher. And the experience he had just doing that during his college years directly led to him becoming an assistant general manager of a minor league baseball team directly out of college. So it segued right from the internship into a professional sports job, just based on the internship itself. And today's students have the huge advantage that we did not have back in the day. As you can tell by my age, I'm the elder statesman. And I go back to the days before there were computers or answering machines or cell phones. So the only way you could really communicate with people was in person or by phone or by handwriting a letter. And just the advantage that today's students have in terms of all the media that's available to them, in terms of being able to research people and being able to research teams, and most importantly, being able to research job openings, because even as obvious as that sounds, that really is the first step in terms of obtaining any type of position, is finding out what the job openings are. And I found that the best website for that is one called Teamwork Online. And I know that there are other websites dedicated exclusively to job openings in the sports industry, but I found Teamwork to be the most comprehensive in terms of covering all the sports, both professional and collegiate, and covering all the openings in all departments. So I would strongly urge all the students that are looking for a career in sports to really get to know that website and to seek out not only job openings, but there are also internship openings with professional sports teams listed on that website. So that would be my best suggestion, would be that website, Teamwork Online.
Thank you, Joe, for sharing that resource too. And we put it in the chat so folks could remember that too. But thank you for sharing that. So Nancy, anything you want to add to that?
I think for me, first, there was a question in the chat to give our background before we answer the question. So I've worked in all types of sports. So I've worked in traditional stick and ball pro sports teams. I've worked in collegiate sport. And then the last 10 years of my career has been spent in the Olympic and Paralympic space. So currently as head of marketing for USA Water Polo, I oversee our brand, athlete marketing, merchandising, sponsorship, and community engagement. In terms of networking for my career, I think it was cornerstone to every aspect of my career. I think just about every job I've obtained has not been through applying. It's been through someone opening a door to someone else, and really started as early on as my internship. I think as an intern, that is the time where you can be completely open with your boss about, our team leader, about your plans to move on, because no one expects you to be an intern for all of your career. So you can have very open and honest conversations with your team leaders about what your plans are. And I took that opportunity when I was at the Denver Broncos, and they created a way for me at the University of Louisville, where I moved on, because they were friends with the athletic director at that time. And then from then on, each role I've had, after Louisville, I went to Boston University. I worked under, part of my job at Louisville was working under Coach Rick Pitino. He coached at Boston University. He opened that door for me, and so on and so forth. So I think it's when you have the ability to develop these relationships, they can be honest, and you can network within your leadership team. I think that's something else to remember, is those that are responsible for your development, there's a way to network within those individuals to continue to further your goals.
Good stuff, Nancy. Thank you for sharing that. So Joe and Celeste, did you all want to give quick insights into your background?
Go ahead, Celeste.
Okay, we'll try this again. Can
Oh, there
everybody
we
hear me
go.
okay now?
Hey.
Yes, thanks. Oh my gosh, what is happening? All right, so I've worked in the media industry for over 20 years. I came in as a production assistant to Fox Sports, and I wanted to be a VP of production because there were very few women that were VPs in production. So I was one of the few in Fox Sports to do that. I went on to work at VSiN in Vegas with Brent Musburger. And then currently now I'm at Nesson as the senior remote operations manager. And we haul the mobile stage to Fenway. And I'm in charge of all the people that touch a camera, whether that's at Fenway or the Garden. And I also started my own business where I really help people authentically speak and share their stories. And that's my background.
And then I'll give a quick shout out to Celeste. Celeste is so inspiring. So Celeste is out there. And so if you're looking for pearls of wisdom just on a daily basis, definitely follow her on LinkedIn. She puts a lot of good stuff out there. And she has a lot of energy, you know, for helping young people and just other people in general in sports. Thank you, Celeste. And Joe, how about you?
Sure. I don't know how many people out there have seen the recent movie Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but that basically was a pretty good summary of how my career started way back in the day. That movie was about 5 years earlier than when I started in Los Angeles in the movie business. And just the long and the short of it was I spent 10 years in the movie business when I first came out here. And one thing that I can apply from the movie business to job searching for any area is sometimes it really is just a matter of making a connection point with a person in terms of making that connection so that they believe in you. In other words, it's not just necessarily putting your best step forward to the head of the company or the human resources person who is eventually going to interview you for the job, but in terms of networking in general, I really believe in making those connection points. And for example, Nancy, you mentioned the Denver Broncos. I have to tell you that one of my hobbies is following high school quarterbacks from the time they play in high school all the way through their pro careers. And I saw John Elway when he was a high school quarterback at Granada Hills High School out here in California. And I followed his career all the way through from Granada Hills to Stanford to the Broncos and followed his whole career and a lot of up and downs in his career. But I was a Broncos fan for those 15 years he was with the team. So that's an example of something right there that I had in common with Nancy, that she mentioned the Denver Broncos, and it turns out that I was a huge fan of the Broncos for 15 years. Celeste, I don't know, which Fox Sports did you work at, Celeste? Which area?
Fox Sports 1 in the end.
Okay, did you work in Los Angeles?
Yes.
Did you ever cross paths with Lindsay Amstutz by any chance?
Yes, Lindsay's amazing.
I worked with Lindsay with the LA Sparks for a couple of years while she was an executive with the Sparks and I was a ticket salesperson for the Sparks. And we became very good friends based on that time I spent with her. And yeah, she's a wonderful person and really was a tremendous contact for me during the time I was there with the Sparks. And Ron, last but not least, I noticed that you took graduate courses at USC. I'm curious, did you take them online or were you on campus when you took?
I was actually on campus.
You were on campus. Okay, great. I'm just curious, were you a football fan while you were taking the classes? Did you go to any USC football games while you were there?
You know, not as many as I should have, being that I had opportunity, but I did go to some, yes.
Oh, you did go to some, okay. I worked at USC football for 1 year, selling tickets about 7 or 8 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Even though I was only there for 1 year, I was there during one of the most tumultuous years in USC sports history. That was the year that Lane Kiffin was the football coach there at USC. And it was quite a colorful and exciting time there, but it was really, it was still a great experience for me personally to have experienced the college environment in terms of selling sports tickets. And I just bring all this up in terms of whatever success I've had in the sports business, that's how I've achieved it, is by making connection points with people based on our mutual interests. And I think that's the key in terms of job hunting, is finding that person who will respond to what you have in your background, that will get that conversation going with them and forging that relationship with them. And I was extremely fortunate when I was in the movie business to connect with those people that were not the top people, but were the underlings or the staff members of the companies. And by getting to know them and forging a relationship with them, that ultimately led to them introducing me to the top people at the companies and getting job positions with them. So once I was ending my, matter of fact, the way I started my sports career was there was actually a movie writer's strike going on in the movie business in the early 1980s. And I worked with writers, so that was bad news for me. I was out of a job while that writer's strike was going on. However, once again, this was in the day before computers. So the only way you could find a job back in those days was to look in the LA Times want ads for jobs. You literally had to open a newspaper and look through the want ads. And fortunately for me, I saw a want ad. It said, wanted for the Los Angeles Kings hockey team, telemarketers wanted. And I go, great, you know, that's right up my alley because I'm from Chicago. I'm a big hockey guy. I was a Kings fan. I knew all about the Kings. And I wasn't sure I could be a telemarketer, but I felt I knew so much about the Kings that I could probably fake the telemarketing part of it just by talking about the Kings nonstop to would-be fans. And that's what I did. I went to work for the Kings at that time as a telemarketer in the early 1980s. And fortunately for me, they were owned by the Bus family, who at that time had just a couple years earlier purchased the Los Angeles Lakers, the Los Angeles Kings, and at that time, the Great Western Forum in a package deal. Dr. Bus bought everything, you know, all in one big deal. And I have been with the Bus family on and off over those next 30 years, working for every team they've owned over all of those years, selling tickets for them. So just by that stroke of fate of seeing that want ad as a Kings telemarketer, I wound up staying in the sports business for over 30 years with the Bus family.
Good stuff, Joe. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate you just bringing up the idea of connection points, but illustrating it, you know, such a way where, you know, people can see the application just from the connections to Celeste, Nancy, and myself. So thank you for sharing that. And I also appreciate what you, Nancy, mentioned too about internships and the benefit that comes from internships. So, all right. So folks, a lot of good stuff has been put out by Joe, Celeste, and Nancy so far. So this is your time to ask some questions. So I think we have some questions in the chat. So let's see here. Okay, you did answer that one question. And Celeste is getting some love in the chat from Diamond. So let's see here. Okay, so I had to mention that. So students, feel free to go ahead and pop in the chat any questions you have for Nancy, Celeste, or Joe. Okay.
While we're waiting, one thing I can warn people about when they're making those connection points, which unfortunately I fell victim to a couple times in the movie business, whenever you drop a name to a person, make sure, and I just made that mistake with Celeste when I mentioned Lindsay. Normally, when you drop a name like that, you should make sure ahead of time that the person has a positive relationship with that person. I made the mistake in the movie business of dropping a name a couple of times. It turns out that the people I was interviewing with or speaking with, it turns out they were not as good of friends with that person that I mentioned as I thought they were, and it kind of backfired on me. So yeah, just a word to the wise that make sure you do your homework and your research if you want to drop names to people while you're interviewing.
Yeah, that's great advice, Joe. And so, so my wife directed me to a question. Yeah, so Dennis, a question from Dennis. So sometimes exhibiting confidence can appear arrogant. Do you have any tips from your side of the networking dynamic on how to avoid seeming arrogant while displaying confidence when networking? So how do you confidently network without coming across arrogant? Thank you, Dennis, for that question.
Gosh, that's a tough question because it's really about your personal presentation. Gosh, that, you know, I tend to, sometimes there's like, you know, the know-it-all vibes, if you're overly aggressive, if you need something from me and I can't get a word in, like that's probably a challenge. Joe, Celeste, that's a tough question because it's really like, for me, the energy that you put out or the energy that I get from you, that I'm going to make that determination. I mean, if that's something that a person struggled with, you know, sometimes it's good to role play with their friends to see, because those are the people that know you the best, and they can tell you like, that's a little cringy there, or like you're good. But that's a tough question, because it's really in that concept of the eye of the beholder.
Vanessa, Joe, any thoughts to that question?
Yeah, I would.
I do think like the biggest thing is to remember this is a conversation, right? You want to learn about as much as the hiring manager or the person you're connecting with as they want to learn about you. So I think sometimes when people are confident and they're trying to oversell themselves or trying to do all that, remember you need to be an active listener too, which is exactly what Nancy's talking about, right? If the hiring manager can't get the word in edgewise, it's frustrating. Like I once asked someone to tell me about yourself, and literally he talked for 8 minutes straight. 8 minutes, it's too long. With what I teach, I tell people, look, you wanna answer that question, tell me about yourself, to be a minute 30. All those recordings that are on HireVue now, all the interviews that are taking place, we don't have the attention span to pay attention for very long, right? So make it a minute 30. And my formula is simple. You say 2 interesting things about yourself, right? Whether that's, you know how to make smash cakes, which are those little baby cakes you smash in, you know, the baby smash in their face instead of wasting the whole cake. Something different and unique so I remember you. I think one of the things, you know, is really with that confidence piece is showing up on video when you're on Zoom calls, right? Like Matthew Lee, I'm loving you right now. I am looking at you. I try to look at you on LinkedIn because I'm like, wow, you're standing out already because you have turned on your video camera. These are ways that you stand out, right? So I will remember you. But having those stories where people remember you, whether there's 2 interesting things about yourself, list 3 things you love to do and why, so you light up and your eyes sparkle and they have that twinkle. So when you are confident, it shows that you're also human, right? And you're relatable. And I think that last piece I would say is when you're showing that confidence, I want to know, yes, you're in it to win it if you're confident, but I want to know what drives you. Why are you doing this? What impact do you want to make on humanity? If you're the know-it-all and you've got all the answers, I'm not the right manager for you. And I don't want to manage you, right? That's that confidence piece. So adding something in there of like what you overcome and diversity and challenges and how you spun that and what you want to do to help humanity forward. That's really a great piece for people to see, especially if you're one of those confident speakers.
Good stuff. Hey, we're going to take one other question. We're at 5 minutes. And so I'm going to take this one quick question and I'm going to give you folks a chance to maybe address, but if you could just also give any parting words of advice about networking. And I'm sorry that we don't have time for more questions. So let's see here if we can find one where we can get a quicker answer. Okay, here's one from Tomas. How can you, and this is going to probably, as quickly as you could probably address this challenging question, how can you set yourself apart from other candidates who also share knowledge and passion for the sports industry? So I know you can go on and on about that, but maybe just share me some quick thoughts about how candidates can set themselves apart from others who are obviously have a passion for the industry.
Can I?
Yeah, let's start, Joe.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly get this in because once again, once this COVID period passes, I really think it's important to get in front of people in person. And there are a couple of quick ways of doing that in the sports business. One thing that is extremely popular once fans attend the games again is almost every sports team does this. They have actual career fairs at their games where they will publicize on their own website that for a certain fee of, let's say $50, it would allow you to participate in a pregame career fair with that team and meet the decision makers at that team in person before the game. And to me, that's one of the best things you can possibly do in the sports business is get in front of the decision makers in person and show your stuff there to them at the game itself. And along that line, the other way to get in front of people, one more quick thing here I wanted to mention about getting in front of people in the sports career is don't necessarily shoot for the top. I know I work for the Lakers right now, but I worked for 15 years for the LA Sparks women's basketball team in the WNBA before I came back to the Lakers 7 years ago. So I would urge people to research the minor league teams that are affiliated with the major league teams. In our case, the Lakers have a G League team called the South Bay Lakers, and it's much easier to get your foot in the door with the minor league team. But the key to it is guess who's in charge of our minor league team? Joey Buss, who is the heir apparent to become in charge of the Lakers someday. So don't underestimate the value of working for the minor league team that is affiliated with the major league team. And one last thought I had about meeting the people in person I was grasping for earlier is because you can research who the staff members are at a team. I don't think there's anything wrong with if you've already submitted a resume online to a particular team for a specific job opening. Every team has a ticket sales table in their lobby during games. I don't think there's anything wrong with just going up to that table and asking for that sales manager by name just to introduce yourself and just say, hey, I wanted to see you in person because I've already put an application in online on Teamwork Online. I just wanted you to be able to connect a face with the name. So once again, I think that's a legitimate way to just get in front of the person without being overly aggressive.
Thank you, Joe. Nancy and Celeste, you guys want to chime in and just any parting words of advice for our students?
Yeah, I would say when it comes to hiring, I'm really interested in people who are interested in the business of sports and they're not a sports fan. I think there's a big difference. You know, everyone's a sports fan, right? But like the business of it, I want to understand that you're interested in things that change the trajectory of the business or that impact the business or how we do business. Those are the type of individuals that I'm interested in, are the people that are truly interested in the business of sports versus being a sports fan. The first thing in an interview when someone says like, oh, I'm a massive sports fan, that's why I want to do this job, like that for me is a massive turnoff. I want you to say like something else along the lines of business. And then the other thing I would say is look, to Joe's point, look outside of traditional stick and ball. Like that is my big push to people in the industry for careers. I think everyone's always looking to work at the professional teams, but there's esports, there's the Olympic and Paralympic movement, there's youth sports, there's so many other points of entry into the sports industry that people forget because they look at the NFL and the NBA and NHL as the pinnacle, but there's so many cool and unique things about other points of entry. Like I'm in the Olympic and Paralympic movement, but I also do international sports because of that. And that is really cool for me. So I look at sports from a global lens. So that's cool and different for me. So I would just widen your net to really understand what the opportunities are out there.
Nancy and Joe, I definitely appreciate you all touching on that too, getting us as students to think more broadly about opportunities in sports. So thank you for that.
I bet you there aren't that many people who know that there are actually 5 minor league hockey teams in California, for example, in the unlikeliest cities you would think of for minor league hockey, like Bakersfield and Ontario and Stockton and cities like that, but they are the top minor league for the NHL. So even though they're small towns and small markets, they're the top minor league teams for those NHL teams. So yeah, there really is a lot of opportunity out there on the minor league level, I believe.
Good stuff. And Celeste, to close us out.
All right, I say, stick with your college professors too. We always talk about this, Ron and myself, with Jeff Ellenser of USC. Those college professors have ins that you do not even know are ins, right? So make sure you're checking with your college professors and then all of the people that are in your classes, right? If a lot of hiring managers, if they really like an employee, they'll ask them like, hey, do you have any other classmates or do you know of any other people that would be great in this role? And sometimes that recommendation that's coming from an entry-level position will get you in through the door. So don't forget about everybody else.
Good stuff. Nice shout out to our professors. Thank you, Celeste. So Joe, Celeste, and Nancy, thank you so much. We don't have nearly enough time for all the wisdom I'll share that you're going to offer our students, but I definitely appreciate what you did share in this condensed period of time. And so a couple of things, if you are okay with students reaching out to you, feel free to drop your contact information in the chat. You're not obligated to do so, but if you want to do that, you can do so. Otherwise, the students can reach out to you on LinkedIn. And then secondly, although I know you're all busy, you have other things that you can be doing, feel free if you want to stick around for a few more minutes and just put some more information in the chat that you think the students could benefit from. You're more than welcome to do so. But otherwise, thank you all again for carving out time for, I know what your busy schedules are on the Friday afternoon. And we definitely look forward to continue to be in touch. Okay, take care.
Thanks for having us.
Certainly.
Thank you.
All right, so great stuff. So another great way to start off our afternoon. So we're going to get into networking bravely. And so we have 3 more industry professionals who've joined us. And so first we have Carly Peterson-Loth, who's a special event sales manager for the Rose Bowl Stadium. So Carly, hello and welcome.
Hello, thanks for having me.
And good to see you there. Carly was actually been a part of a couple of events I had this year, part of a conference and another panel event we had prior to that. And then we have Michael Bodmer from associate producer for ESPN. I'm not sure if Michael's on. Michael, you on by any chance? Okay, I know there's been some stuff happening in his world that have been a little bit challenging, so he's probably able to make it today. And then finally, we have Euro Martinez, who's the vice president of sales for the Los Angeles Galaxy. Euro, are you on by any chance?
I am, Ron. Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Thank you for having me, and good hello to everyone. Okay,
terrific. Thank you for joining us. And so, so before I hear from Carly and Euro, I wanted to go ahead and just give my 2 cents about networking bravely. Then we'll go ahead and hear their insights. And so networking bravely with courage and confidence. So definition of brave is possessing or exhibiting courage or courageous endurance. And so a couple thoughts. So number 1, networking does require some risk. And so getting out of your comfort zone, connecting with people that you don't know and that you may have to impress, it's going to be risky. So it is definitely going to be that. Number 2, but take the pressure off by focusing on simply being a positive to the other person and believing that you can add value in some way. So don't be so focused on trying to impress somebody, but really just think about ways where you can just simply be a positive. Are you the person that has a kind word? Are you the person that can smile or be polite or considerate? Start there and just simply try to focus on being a positive and to truly believe that you have some way of adding value to that individual, no matter how high they're up the food chain, but you do have some value based on maybe what you know or experiences you've had or resources or contacts, you can add value. And then finally, trust that the networking risk is worth the reward. Trust that your efforts to come out of your comfort zone to get yourself out there will lead you to good people who are willing to invest in your career success. And so we're seeing some examples of some great people here at this event today who have joined this simply because they want to help and they want to be able to share their insights, lessons learned, and advice in the way to help you to be more successful with your career too. So definitely keep that in mind. So I'm going to encourage you to use the chat function once again to share any questions you may have or thoughts around networking bravely. To ask Carly and Uriel and Celeste if you had anything to add to what I shared about networking bravely, and if not, we can certainly move on to other questions. So anything else to add in terms of that topic? Okay, fair enough. If you think of anything else, feel free to chime in. Celeste, did you have something?
One of the questions that always comes up about networking is like, how much is too much, sending messages to people and trying to get in connection with them. And I know, for example, I always share this story at Fox Sports. When I was in charge of the assignment desk, we literally had 1,000 emails a day. Like there was a lot going on, right, in the world of sports. So like seeing your name coming up every week reminded me like, hey, you're still there. You still want the job. You still want the gig. So I don't think it's too much doing once a week, especially if you're going for a job. And then, just chiming in on holidays or different things that are going on. Hey, how's your fall going? That's networking bravely, in my opinion, because it's not just when you want something that you're networking, you're actually caring about the connection and fostering that relationship.
Great point, Celeste. Thank you for that too. And we touched on something similar, in one of our previous sessions too. But networking is about the long game, too. And it's not just about that. I need something immediately from you, but staying in touch with people and just connecting with them outside of having a need to be addressed. Okay, good stuff. All right, so I'm going to ask the 3 of you and to share. Celeste, I don't think we asked you this question in the last session, so it'll be good to hear from you on this. But can you just share how networking and relationship building has helped you in your sports career? And so, Carly, Uriel, or Celeste, feel free to chime in on that.
I can talk about that a little bit. So starting out, I got an internship at CSUN in athletics. And I thought it would be fun to apply for a job at the San Francisco Giants. Fortunately, I was able to get the internship, the paid internship. I then wanted a full-time job, so I worked for a minor league team. And the minor league team in Stockton were owned by the grandkids of Walter O'Malley. So it was Peter O'Malley and his sister Terry. Their kids owned the minor league team that I worked for. Somehow, some way, my resume got to the Los Angeles Dodgers. Now, my boss, Tommy Seidler, still to this day proclaims that he never said anything, but it is not ironic to me that I work for the family of the O'Malleys and I get hired by the Dodgers. So somewhere in there, I feel like my networking or relationship skills helped me land a full-time job with an awesome organization. So that is one story.
Very cool, Carly. Thank you for sharing that. And you, once again, as you mentioned earlier, you never know what opportunities can arise. There's something about connecting for someone. You don't know who they're tied to and what connections they have. So good stuff.
Absolutely.
So Uriel or Celeste?
Yeah, I can share a quick note. So, you know, when I actually worked for the Dodgers starting off right out of college as well too. And for me, networking was a little bit different. I actually was networking just within the people that I was working with. And that really kind of helped connect me to some of the sports networks that they were involved in. One in particular, colleague of mine was getting her MBA at USC at the time, and she was part of a sports email distribution list of jobs at the time. And, you know, so that's how I kind of caught wind of different opportunities within the industry and landed my job working in the NBA for the Clippers. You know, and that kind of was a 12-year run. So for me, it wasn't necessarily, you know, people that I didn't know. It was just kind of networking within my own kind of inner circle that really helped me kind of catapult towards working in sports.
Good stuff, Uriel. Thank you for sharing that.
And Ron, I have to say that you have a great knack of pairing me with people that I know. So Uriel and I worked at the Clippers together for several years. So thank you for putting me with someone I know. It makes it a lot more comfortable.
Very cool. Well, I can't take credit for that, but I'm glad it worked out.
Unfortunately, though, she can validate or invalidate anything that I say. So, you know, we'll see how that goes.
So we'll do some fact checking. So I'll just go back
exactly.
So that's anything you want to add in terms of how relationship networking has helped you in sports?
Yeah, you know, when my first job out of college was CNN Sports Illustrated at that time. It's no longer, you know, exists or anything like that. And I was a freelancer. And what is amazing is, like, you know, when you show up for work every day and you work hard and you say hi to people and just try to make those connections, people, you know, look at you and say, okay, they're a hard worker, or they're doing this, or they're personable, or whatever. So when I was 25, I was dating this cute guy, and he moved to California, and I wanted to be with him, right? So I was telling everybody in the office, I was like, well, there's this really cute guy. I got to get to California. How am I going to do this? And so they made calls on my behalf, and I was so dumb. Like, at that time, one of the guys from Fox Sports, the regions, called me, and he goes, okay, well, you're going to be doing this, and this is your salary. And I was like, all right, because I was so in love, right? So I'm like, whatever you offer, I'm going to take. And I lowball myself by like $5,000 to $10,000 at that time. I was so dumb, but I ended up marrying the guy, so it all worked out. But you know, when you tell your story, people will try to help you.
Very good story. That's hard to forget, Sebastian. Very, very good story. Very cool. All right. So at this point, I want to go ahead and open the floor up to questions from our students. And so once again, this is all about you and give you an opportunity to ask questions. And so Carla, Uriel, and Celeste have gotten us started. So any questions? I do see something in the chat here. So Tomas has, I was curious about diversity efforts the panelists see impacting the sports industry. Okay. So thank you, Tomas. A very good question. So he's curious about the diversity efforts that you all see impacting the sports industry. So anybody want to chime in on that?
Well, I'd have to say that it's changed a lot in the last 20 years. So I'm definitely dating myself, both being a female and brown. So also it depends on what city you're in as well, you know. So I think in Southern California, we're very fortunate, very lucky that the owners and ownership and organizations down here are very, very diverse and are willing to hire both minorities and women.
Yeah, and I think over the last year, particularly what had happened last summer with George Floyd, I think that's really kind of put this front and center, particularly for AEG. Over the last 12 months, we've instituted a DEI committee that specifically focuses on both club culture, hiring practices, and everything else, and also from the corporate level at AEG. So I think just how we view hiring, on how we view equity, on how we view a lot of the different things that I think have been present for years and years and years, but I think are just making it more comfortable for people in leadership positions and people that are looking to get into sports more comfortable on bringing it up. And more importantly, I think just making everybody aware that, you know, everyone has a bias, whether or not they want to admit it or not. But I think it doesn't make you a bad person. It just makes you realize that you have to address it, and there are ways to address it.
Great stuff. Thank you, Uriel. Appreciate you sharing that. So that's anything you want to add to that question?
Yes, I think there are, you know, we're seeing a lot of organizations really have those pipelines that are created. Nesson, for example, has a great externship program. If anyone wants to get involved with that, I'll put the information in the chat. That's okay, Ron. But really, like we were seeing, like the Philadelphia Eagles having diverse training to really, again, start those pipelines early, right? Bringing great talent to the table early instead of really, you know, finding those people right away and then moving them up within the organization instead of waiting for them to move into other roles later on.
Cool. So I see we have a question from Matthew. Matthew, go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, definitely. I think I want to ask kind of like a follow-up to that question is like, all three of you have kind of worked in like bigger companies and large roles. And like, I want to ask if y'all have felt supported within those roles at these large companies. And I'm sure that's changed over the past like 20 years, as some of you mentioned.
Yeah, I could start off. Fortunately, I've always have never felt like I didn't get something because of, you know, my background, the color of my skin, how I, you know, work my way up. I've been very fortunate in that sense, where a lot of the things that I've done and the things that I've accomplished, I feel like I haven't really run into a lot of that stuff, Matthew. So that I think I've been very fortunate in that sense. Can I say that that's the same for everyone? Absolutely not. But I think to answer your question specifically, no, I personally haven't found a ton of roadblocks in my career, but doesn't mean that they don't exist, and it doesn't mean that I shouldn't make sure that anyone who's in a similar position coming up isn't facing similar challenges and trying to figure out how I can help.
Thank you, Uriel. Anybody else want to address that question?
Yeah, I think, you know, in my career, I had 2 allies my whole entire time at Fox, and they were very much pro-women, wanted women to get ahead, become vice presidents and that. So one of the guys, he and I were kind of at the same level, and he would make more money than me, right? Because again, you know, men are making more money than women in some roles right now. So he would tell me literally what he was making. And then my boss, I'd go knock on his door and be like, okay, I'm ready to make that same amount of money. What do I have to do to make that same amount? And they were both great, and they would help me move along. So if you find those 1 or 2 cheerleaders that can really like move you in your career, that's all you need, you know?
Good stuff. Thank you, Celeste. All right. So I see a couple other questions. I'm sorry, go ahead. Okay. So I see Rohan's hand raised. Rohan, we're going to get to you in just a moment, but I wanted to tackle a question I saw from, let's see here, from Jacob. So this is an interesting question. So with the proliferation of social media and entertainment content on streaming services, Gen Z has seen overall interest in sports decline. What do you think are the best ways to fight this interest decline? So are you guys get that question? So with the proliferation of social media and entertainment content on streaming services, Gen Z has seen overall interest in sports decline. So I'm assuming maybe live events possibly, but what do you think are the best ways to fight this interest in decline? This interest decline.
My quick 2 cents on it is I think that as a business and in sports entertainment, we have to adapt to our consumers just like everyone else, right? And I think we're no different in terms of how we engage, whether it's with millennials, Gen Z, and the next future wave of potential fans. So I think for that, how you fight it is just continuing to adapt, continuing to evolve, and continuing to find new ways to reach your constituents and your potential fans down the future, whether that's through online. Obviously, esports has taken off and is a really big avenue for both reaching young kids as they're kind of coming up, And certainly that's becoming a bigger force. So I think just adapting and kind of, knowing what your target audience is doing and kind of evolving and strategizing and kind of building your plan towards that way.
Yeah. All right. So, Roham, feel free to go ahead and ask your question.
So my question, I think, relates to all three. So I can see that throughout your careers, you have changed jobs, but in the sports industry, but in like basketball, football, soccer. In my opinion, these are three different products. Like you work in sales manager for soccer, it's different products to working sales manager for basketball. I just asked, like, how did you transition in each sports industry, in each sport that you went on? Was it hard, or what were the challenges that you faced when you were transitioning from that sport to another?
I think that's directed towards me, but a lot of the things were very similar, I think, and even the other panelists can agree that how you treat people, how you interact with others doesn't change whether you're kicking a ball or shooting a basket, right? Or throwing a football. I think it's a lot of the processes on how you're building out your sales team, how you're, building out your agenda and your goals and objectives are all very similar. So that was very fortunate, and as I've made the transitions from baseball to basketball to soccer, where I think it was a little bit more of a transition is just, in the NBA, you're on a lot of the times leading Sports Center. You're on a lot of these general media outlets without having to, do a lot of paid behind it. With MLS, although it's made a ton of progress over the last 26 years, it still is a very up and coming sport in North America. So in terms of brand awareness and just overall interest, we're still kind of a growing sport. And you think about the EPL and the hundreds of years that they've been in existence, and MLS has only been in existence for 26 years. Just the gap there and how much work we need to do in order to be on that level. And then obviously in North America, it's dominated by the top four leagues in terms of just what you see on TV. And with social media, I think that there's been more coverage for other sports, which I think is great. So I think just overall, just brand awareness and recognition probably was the biggest eye-opening thing that I found making the transition from working in the NBA to the MLS.
Thank you.
Thank you for addressing that question, Uriel. Thank you for the question, Roham. So one of the questions, this is in the chat, and this is from Hidenobu, I believe that's how I pronounce his name. Should I network with only people who are working currently for the position or the company I'm interested in, or is it okay to network with people who used to work for the position or the company? I think I could probably say you have permission to do so, but I want to get an interested guest take on that. So should I network with only people who are currently working for the position or the company I'm interested in, or is it okay to network with people who used to work for the position or the company?
Everybody. Everyone. Because you never know who has connections with who. It really is 6 degrees of separation. When you go on LinkedIn, I do love LinkedIn for that reason, because you can see who's worked there in the past, or you can go through, someone's profile and say, okay, there's, Fox Sports has obviously worked with the Galaxy, right? Or we worked with the Rose Bowl, so there's always those connections. You never know who knows who.
Good stuff. All right. So go ahead, Carly. My apologies, please.
That's okay. I was going to say, if you talk to someone that used to work at the company, they might tell you reasons why they're no longer working at that company.
That's a great point. You'll get the real, right? All right. So good questions, students. Thank you for these questions. Keep them coming. And so I think we have time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions. So any of the questions, feel free to pop them in the chat, or you take yourself off mic. And actually, while we're waiting for another question, I'm going to ask our industry guests, Carly, Uriel, and Celeste, do you have any particular do's or don'ts for networking? So things that you think students should absolutely do in terms of networking, and things that they absolutely should stay away from when it comes to networking.
I do. I think if you meet someone, it would be really cool to send them a card, because handwritten cards are very rare now, and they will remember you took the time to write them a card. So then the next time you reach out to them, it will be on their mind. Oh, that's the person that wrote me a card. And then you put one thing in that conversation in that card. So it's a personal connection. You're not just meeting them to get to the next step. You're meeting them to actually have a relationship with them.
Great advice.
I love that, Carly. I would say too, one of the things I love that people do is just stay in touch, right? Before you need something, before the ask that comes, right? If you're saying something about the holiday, I don't know if I said this on this panel or that last panel, but it's really about being that top of mind candidate. And how do you become that top of mind candidate? It's by making that connection and actually caring about the person and caring about the conversation and the connection. So foster that connection. And the last thing I'll say is follow up. I've seen so many times where someone's gone to a hiring manager, especially people who want to be on camera or who want to work in a specific job, and they've gone to the hiring manager or the person that can hire, and the hiring manager just told them to do something. And then all of a sudden, you know, and best intentions, truly best intentions, but something came up and they couldn't do this and schoolwork and that totally killed their chances of ever even working in that company at all. So if you're not going to follow up, don't ask.
Good stuff. And that follow-up is so key too. And so the thank you card helps you stand out, and that follow-up as well. Uriel, anything to add to any of that at all? Or
My quick response would be just take advantage of the resources that are out there. I know we're for the three of us in terms LinkedIn, although it's become very prominent in the industry, it didn't exist certainly when I started in the industry. So it's certainly, you have no excuse on you know, being able to reach out. I mean, you look at us three here, the panelists. You know, we're here just because we want to help. So there are hundreds of thousands of people who are in a very similar role with very similar influence, who are eager to just help. You just have to ask. So I think that's kind of a great opportunity for young professionals who are looking to break into the industry, is to take advantage of the resources that are out there.
yeah, Uriel, thank you for sharing that too. That reinforces, you know, the theme that, or sentiments that we heard from some others previously too. The opportunities are there in abundance. And yeah, wonderful people like this who are here because they want to help you as well. And one thing I'm just going to add, just real quick, if I could, is that also, you know, pass the wisdom on to your friends. So those of you who are on this, who's participating in this event, we commend you for taking the time out to do this, for investing in your own career. But certainly, you know, for friends who may not be able to, maybe for whatever reason, pass the wisdom on to them too, so that they can have some kind of success. All right, so we are almost at time, so we have about 3 or 4 minutes. And so I'm going to ask Carly, Celeste, and Uriel if you have any parting words of advice for our students in terms of networking. Anything you feel that they should know that you haven't had a chance to touch on.
The only thing I have to add is, if you're speaking to someone and you're asking them questions or you're doing an informational interview, make sure you're paying attention. Make sure you're taking notes. The person knows if you really have an interest in them or not. So when you're doing your thank you card, you're not, oh shoot, I should have been paying attention, or oh, the Dodger game went to 16 innings. Like, pay attention to the conversation. I know our brains are all over the place, but focus on that time that they're giving you, because you're right, we do want to help, but we also don't want our time wasted.
Yeah, great point. And we talked about that type of thing too, about active listening and let people engage, you know. So good stuff, Carly. Thanks for sharing that. All right, so Celeste or Uriel, anything you want to add in terms of parting words of advice?
Yeah, just don't give up. I know some of you have been looking for jobs for a while and it gets, you know, disheartening and all of that, but it will happen. It will happen. Just don't give up. Keep networking, keep applying. You're going to get there.
Good stuff. Don't give up. And Uriel, anything to close us out?
Yeah, and I'll just piggyback on my last point about just taking advantage of the resources that are out there. Like I said, there's really no excuse on being able to work where you want to work. Just find out who the contact people are. And as I think someone mentioned earlier, do it before you actually need it. you know, where if you see a job or you see something else that you like, you already know, hey, I already have a connection there, versus, you know, hitting them up for the first time when you actually need something. So I think that's very important.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Chi. Great. Yeah, because people are used to coming to when someone has a need. But yeah, get to know people just in general. And then when that ask comes up, then you already have the relationship. All right. Well, Carly, Celeste, and Uriel, thank you very much for carving out some time for your busy schedules. And Celeste, to give you some extra props for devoting a whole hour to us. I know you got other things that you could be doing, so I appreciate you sticking around.
Anything for you.
Thanks, Celeste. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
So before you all go, couple things. If you are open to people staying in touch with you, feel free to drop your contact information in the chat. There's no obligation for you to do that because people can always reach out to you on LinkedIn. But if you want to do that, feel free to do so. Also, if you do want to stick around for a few more minutes and there's something else that you want to share with the students in the chat, you're more than welcome to do so too. But other than that, thank you again. And I'll definitely look forward to reconnecting with you all again down the line.
Thank you, Ron. Thanks, Carly. Nice to meet you, Celeste. Thank you, guys. Take care.
All right, so let's go ahead and move on to our last module. And so great stuff, folks, you know, that we've been hearing for this afternoon session. And so we have our final module on networking competently. And so I have 3 individuals who agreed to join us. And so first of all, Craig Sendachi. Craig, did I get that right? Okay, perfect. He's the Vice President of Premium Sales and Service for the Los Angeles Dodgers. And then our second guest, Eddie Maisonette, the third. I'm not sure if Eddie's able to make it, but he's an NBA editor for ESPN. I know he has something personal happening, so he wasn't sure about his availability. And then finally, Martina McCowan, who's a Group Sales Account Executive for the Los Angeles Clippers. Martina, are you on by any chance? Okay, so Martina may be running behind. So Craig, it looks like it's going to be your show, at least for the first few minutes. So,
Ron, I can stay for a little bit.
oh yeah, Carly, that'd be great. So you guys see how great these folks are, you know?
Hi, Craig. Good to see you, buddy.
Hey, Carly. I couldn't have a better teammate than Carly stepping in, so we'll make this work for you, Ron.
Okay, thank you, Craig. I love that. Okay, perfect. All right, so as I've done previously, I am going to give my 2 cents on networking competently, and then we're going to hear more from Craig and Carly, either on that topic or other topics related to networking. So networking competently, the proper way. So definition of competent, having suitable or sufficient skill, knowledge, experience, etc., for some purpose or properly qualified. So my 2 cents, number 1, all efforts to network are not created equal. There are right ways and definitely wrong ways. Number 2, networking should be done with the best interest of the other person in mind, not just yours. So once again, it's not just about you, but it's also about the other person. 3, proper networking should extract some value from the relationship and should also add value to it. So if you're networking the right way, then you should be getting some kind of value from the person, but you also certainly should be adding value to that person. And then finally, if you're not sure how to network the right way, ask around. So you got lots of people out there. You got career advisors, professors, mentors, and industry professionals who are here today who can give you some guidance on networking competently. So as I mentioned before, feel free to use the chat function to share any questions you may have or thoughts about how to network the right way or network the proper way. So let's go ahead and get into it. And it looks like I think Martina popped on. Martina, are you there by any chance?
Yeah, hey, how's it going?
Good, Martina. Thank you for joining us and welcome. So just to let you know, Carly Peterson lost. She was from the previous session. She's staying on. And so she's going to be co-presenting with you along with Craig. And so I wanted to ask if you all could just start off by, number 1, is there anything that you want to add to what I shared about networking the right way, networking properly? And if not, we can move on. But does anybody want to add any other thoughts to how to network the right way?
Ron, I had jotted down a few notes. I didn't know if this was going to pop into the questions, but I guess if you're offering the floor here, I'll jump in and just say a few things. You know, I thought you put it very well in terms of, you know, networking authentically, bravely, and competently. And this may seem obvious, but one thing I thought about when you're networking competently is you want to be networking authentically and bravely. That is networking competently. So what I mean by that is if you're not being authentic in your true self and you're not being brave in how you're doing it, then you're not networking competently. So kind of goes without saying there, but I think it's an important point to note. And I think if you feel like you're not being your authentic self or you're not being brave, probably step back, reassess, and see how you want to approach it differently moving forward so you don't get too far down that road and feel like you're almost working backwards as opposed to forwards. And then one key thing I wanted to also touch on as well is I think when you're networking competently, you're being as prepared as possible. And I don't think that goes without, it's not anything earth-shattering there either. However, something to easily overlook. For instance, if you're going in for an informational interview, you want to do your research on that person and know what they're about, what their history is, so that when you go into it, you don't get caught off guard with anything. You have some background work and knowledge going into that space. And then secondly, I always find it, frankly, a little bit annoying if someone's coming to me for an informational interview and I say to them, hey, what questions might you have? And there's no questions. That to me is being unprepared. So make sure you always have questions. I think that goes without saying as well. When you're going in for an informational interview, you have some questions, but be ready to pivot and have some backup ones as well. Even if you think it's too many, you may not get through them all, but at least you have enough ammo going into that interview. And to me, that is how you're networking competently.
Great stuff, Craig. And I love how you tied it together. I almost feel like I'm going to pay you for this too, but tying in networking authentically, bravely, and competently together. And they all work in concert. And certainly that preparation piece is so key too. So thank you for all of that. All right, so Martina or Carly, do you want to share anything about networking competently or anything else about networking that you think students should know?
And make it go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, I think Craig hit it on the head. I think also when you're networking, it's important to, like you said, just be authentically you, because you're also supposed to be presenting your best self. So people are also getting the opportunity to know you, because you never know what doors will be presented for you to lift that next person up. So I thought Craig said some great things.
Yeah, thank you, Martina. And Carly?
They both said it. I'm good now.
All right, great. And so before I take any questions from the students, I have one more question I want to ask the three of you. So, and Carly heard this question, I believe, in the last session, but can you just share how networking or relationship building has benefited you in your sports career?
I can share another story.
Sure, feel free.
And it has to do with Craig. So I was at the Clippers for almost 7-8 years, and my time there was kind of running short as I wasn't advancing or I wasn't doing what I wanted to do anymore. And so I was looking for other opportunities, and it came to my attention that the Rose Bowl was hiring. And I remembered that Craig was working at the Rose Bowl after working at the Dodgers. So I reached out to Craig and thought, well, this is a great opportunity to find out a little bit more about the Rose Bowl and the job. And so, lo and behold, I'm here at the Rose Bowl happy as a clam, and he left me to go back to the Dodgers, but we won't talk about that. But it just really affirmed the relationships that I have built over time to help solidify some of my steps in the different jobs I've had. So.
And you guys will see there's a theme going through these sessions too. Sports, as you've heard too, it's a small world. And so it's really interesting to see how many relationships have been formed, how many connections have been formed just based among the industry professionals today. So thanks for sharing that story, Carly. And sorry that Craig left you. So Martina or Craig, anything you want to add in terms of how relationship building, networking has benefited you in your sports career?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and jump in. So my whole career had started with just like a referral. So I was a senior at Long Beach State, played basketball there. And I was like, hey, like Carly, things are kind of coming to an end. I'm about to enter the real world and become an adult. So I went to just a career fair, had talked to someone. I was like, hey, I think I want to stay around basketball. It's, what I'm comfortable with, what I've been known my whole life. So I'm just, having those conversations, presenting myself and talk to someone and they're like, yeah, we're looking for an account executive. So I didn't even know what an account executive was, but I'm like, all right, cool. Like whatever you guys need, I can do. And this was for the ACC, so the Agua Caliente Clippers. So obviously I was a little bit underqualified with no experience. So he actually, through networking, had passed my resume along to the inside sales manager at the Clippers. And essentially that's how my career started, through just word of mouth, that presentation, how I presented myself. And I think, like you said, just networking in general is huge. You never know, who you're going to meet, what doors they're going to open. And like I said before, just you picking that next person up and caving that path for the next person. So my whole career started on just like a word of mouth. Someone put my resume on someone's desk, like it landed in the right hands, and I got a call by the grace of God. So been just fortunate, and networking is everything.
Yeah, thank you, Martina. And that's a great way to end it. Networking is everything too. And just, I really like that you talk about how you present yourself and how that opens the doors for you as well. So you never know. And one other thing too that you said early on that I want to touch on too is just a concept of paying it forward, And so I appreciate you and obviously Craig and Carly for being on here as a way of paying it forward to the next generation. So Craig, how's relationship building, networking impacted you, helped you in your career?
I think Martina and Carly both touched on some really good points. Just quickly, I think it helps you be known, but it also, I think, gives you a little bit of a level of respect, I think, if you handle yourself well in there, and that can go a long ways. Obviously, Martina touched on this, opens a ton of doors, so you just never know what door is going to open up for you. That's why it's important to really never stop networking, because you never know when you're going to want or need a door to open. And if you've done your job networking, oftentimes it's going to open up a door when you least expect it, or at least you can knock on that door and get some help from a friend or a colleague. So those are all excellent points. The one thing I thought I'd also touch on quickly is your career and your roles are going to evolve as you move forward, right? So networking is not just about, oh, I'm going to get an informational interview with this vice president or this senior director at this team I'm at, because my hope is that they'll give me a job, or one day they might lead me to a job. There's also like horizontal or networking. I don't want to say down is not the appropriate word, but if I take an informational interview with someone, maybe I'm in the need for a job in the future, or I'm trying to get in with this new company, and maybe the person that I gave that informational interview to, maybe their brother, father, whatever, is at the company. And if I've treated someone well and I've been my authentic self and trying to, as Ron said, pay it forward, that's going to kind of pay dividends for me. So it's not always about networking with the people above you. It's also networking with the people, below you in some ways. And then also horizontally. And what I mean by that is Carly's example is a perfect one. I wasn't the hiring person for the job. So it's not like she called on me to say, hey, you know me, I'd really like this job. It was like, hey, can you put me in touch with this person? I'm trusting you that you know me, you're going to put in a good word for me having worked with me. And then my reputation or my relationship with those individuals is going to help Carly out as well. You never know when you're going to need to reach out to a colleague to help fill positions on your team or get some advice or help. And again, that's kind of networking across the board. I have a text thread that's ongoing with about 13 people that I met several years ago within Major League Baseball. Some are still in Major League Baseball with teams, and others have moved on to different, sports or whatnot, but that thread still exists. Just got a text today from someone to the whole group saying, hey, we're interested in hiring for an inside sales manager. Does anyone have any recommendations, or can they send anyone my way? And that goes to 13 people. So a perfect example of how networking for me could help someone else out. And I may be in that same exact boat in a year or two or whenever, asking for the same kind of help.
Great stuff, Craig. So a couple of things. So never stop networking. Appreciate you sharing that too. So you don't network until you get a job or internship, and then you're done. Never stop networking. And then secondly, in networking not only vertically or up, but horizontally, and also networking, as you mentioned, sort of quote unquote down too, because you never know where, as Craig mentioned, where those opportunities are going to come. And it's just good. It's just reasonable. It's just good sense. Just really trying to provide benefit to anybody, whether they're quote unquote above you in terms of a level, or below you, or at the same level. Great stuff. All right. So students, a lot of good stuff has been put out here. So let's see what kind of questions you have for Carly, Martina, or Craig. And feel free to pop your questions in the chat, or you can check yourself off mic and ask your questions audibly. Okay, so looks like Tomas has a question and it is in the chat. Okay, so let's see here. Make sure I'm getting it. Okay, so this looks like it's a question directed to Martina. So
Mhm.
Martina, yes, how were you able to leverage your athletic experience to make you a stronger candidate in finding a position in the sports industry?
I think for me, just the intangibles, like I've been a student athlete my whole life. So just the intangibles that basketball taught me, I know that like work experience and like you guys are saying that networking is really important. But for me, basketball taught me time management, organization and different things like that. So for me, it's just been a smooth transition from basketball to basketball and being able to impact the game in a different way than like actually putting the ball in the basket. But yeah, I think it's just the intangibles, the communication. I learned how to communicate with my teammates on the basketball court. So it makes it easier for me to communicate with, like Craig said, someone on the same level as me or someone above me, being able to communicate with my coaches and our donors at Long Beach State. And then also, I think it just put me in a better position to kind of know what I'm talking about. Here with the Clippers, we were pushing some FSCs and stuff. So for us, like our full seasons and some packages. So a lot of sales that I do is it's based on trust. So when I actually can break it down to my clients and to like my network that I know what I'm talking about, it just builds a level of trust and rapport and relationship with them. So it's gone a long way. I think all experience is important, just like networking. Being able to take different lessons from, you know, whatever it is, whether you were a grocer during this time of the pandemic, like taking that network and, you know, those skills you got from that and applying it to the next thing is very important.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Martina, too. And so as a student athlete, you offer a lot of value, particularly as you're getting into sports too. But just talking about those intangibles, those transferable skills, it's definitely good to remember. So thank you for sharing that. And Tomas, thank you for the question. So any other questions for our three industry guests? And once again, feel free to pop them in the chat or you to raise your hand and ask audibly.
I'll ask one.
Hey, go ahead, Matthew. Thank you.
Of course. I wanted to ask if you had any advice for if you were back in college or in school and like things that you wish you had known now that you know now that might have like benefited you like at the time. When you break into the sports industry.
Yeah, no worries. I got a late start. So I was like, I didn't really know that I wanted to break into the sports industry. So I think just dibble and dabble in everything. Like if you have an interest, go after it. If you know someone that does it already, shadow them, like get as much experience and knowledge about something before you're locked into it, or like, it's not bad to have your hands in a little bit of everything until you're like, okay, this is what I want to do. I think if I could tell my college self something, it would be just like, be open-minded and like explore. Like a lot of my time was consumed with basketball, obviously on the court, but like, I know there was times I could have found off the court where I could go to, you know, shadow someone or try this out. So I think my biggest just piece of advice would be to try everything out, like take internships, network, use your summers effectively, educate yourself. And then, you know, once you find your niche or you find something that you really want to do, just attack it.
Good stuff. So be curious, be open-minded. Mm-hmm. And Carly and Craig, anything you would share with your college self if you had to do all the opportunity?
I think with networking, it's not who you know, it's who knows you. Mm-hmm. So to make sure, we've talked about it kind of multiple times, but to make sure you leave a lasting impression on the person that you had been networking with, or your informational interview, paying attention, sending a follow-up email, sending a follow-up thank you card for their time, just putting you ahead of the rest of the group, because there's so much competition out there. If there's one thing that stands out from you that's positive, they're going to remember that and pick you to have that phone call or the job opportunity.
Terrific. Very good. Yeah. So it counts to the people that know you. And we talked about earlier about making yourself visible, getting out there so people that actually know you and know your value. So Craig?
Yeah, I would say, you know, I'm an old man in this game. So I would tell the young folks, when I was getting started, sports business wasn't what it is today, right? It's a big business now. When I joined the Dodgers the first time, I think, Carly, correct me if I'm wrong, We had 2 group sales reps. It was Carly and a new hire. We had 2 full-time year-round season sales reps. And then maybe we had 3 other salespeople. Now we have like 40 to 50 here.
Right,
So the
yes.
competition level is significantly higher than what it was before. So one thing I guess I would tell this group of people kind of trying to get into the industry is do not get discouraged. Keep working hard. Failure, if you want to view it as that, is a good thing, right? And I guess this might even go back to Martina. I wasn't a D1 basketball player like she was, but I'm sure she would share the lesson that, you know, if you fail, what do? You just keep working at it. You keep doing drills. You keep taking instruction. Don't give up. Just because that one door that you maybe want to open doesn't open, keep at it. Constantly reassess yourself and how you're getting better, and just constantly work at it. You know, I think Martina touched on this too, and it's a good point. Just because if you're putting different irons in the fire, right? If you're like, oh, I'm going to try and see if I can get an internship with the marketing department or public relations or sales, whatever it might be. And let's say you do not like it, and quickly you can discern that this is not going to be for me. I think there's 2 key points to take away from that. Number one, and Carly touched on this, everyone's always watching, and it's the detail that people are paying attention to. So just because you may not like it, know that you're going to finish that internship, whatever it might be, out strong. And that way you're going to leave the best impression forward, even if that's not something you want to continue doing. And don't view that experience as a failure. If there's 6 things out there that you're exploring, and one of them, maybe the first one doesn't go your way, guess what you've learned? It's not a failure. You've learned, I don't want to work in PR. So all PR jobs moving forward, I'm taking them off. You've learned something from that experience. So now you've narrowed down your focus as to where you want to be. So that's another thing to consider during the process.
Great stuff, Craig. Terrific. All right, other questions? And it's good to get that inspiration. You know, don't give up, don't get discouraged, and that you learn from any experience that you're in. So feel free once again to pop the questions in the chat or take yourself off mic if you have questions that you want to ask verbally. And while we're waiting for some questions, I do want to ask our 3 industry guests, any particular do's and don'ts when it comes to networking? Anything that you think students should absolutely do with networking, or things that they should definitely stay away from when it comes to networking?
I would say a big do for me, and what I've wish I would have done actually in college, is built my LinkedIn up. You can always reach out to, you know, whoever and send them a little note like, hey, I'm curious. I think LinkedIn just not necessarily a big do, but just a tool for networking is great. Like you know, you can't be in a million different places at once, but you know, I'm LinkedIn with someone that works at the Mavs, or I'm LinkedIn with someone that works with the Dodgers. Like, you know, you just never know. And then that gets your LinkedIn profile out there as well. You might pop up on someone's Explorer page and they come across you. So I think that's a great resource and a great do.
Yeah, thanks for the plug on LinkedIn. For LinkedIn, I'm a big fan of it, and we talked about it earlier. It's a great platform to network with other people, but also to showcase your value. So Craig and Carly, any do's or don'ts?
One thing, I guess this would be more, Ron, I think I saw in some of your questions you sent over to us, like, you know, maybe chamber meetings or some type of meetings that are more in person. I know those have been few and far between over the last 1.5 years for all of us, but when those get back up and running, or you're at conferences or whatnot, when you do get into the industry, or if you're still looking for something, I'm in sales, so this is probably going to sound counterintuitive, but I'm not a huge fan of setting goals when you go into those types of environments. Like, I'm going to get 5 business cards, or I'm going to meet 10 people today, right? Don't put that added pressure on yourself. Again, it's all relative. You could meet 10 people, and if you're not being your true authentic self and you're not networking competently, those are just 10 nothings. Who cares? Whereas if you're doing everything the right way and you meet one person, you never know what that person could bring you. So, you know, 5, 10, whatever, just go into it, be positive, and be your authentic and true self. And I think it's going to work out well for you, whether you get 1 contact, 5, whatever it may be.
Craig, I'm definitely having you back again and again and again. You do such a beautiful job of tying in the theme. So I love that. And I'm gonna send you a check in the mail. So
yeah, you told me it was going to be $75. I'm doubling it to $150. So let's go. Yeah.
All right, Carly, how about you?
I think I've mentioned it. Dues always send follow-up emails or handwritten thank you cards. Don't ask a question and then don't pay attention. You don't want to waste anyone's time. I can't tell you enough how, especially now that a lot of us are understaffed, and so time is valuable and we want to help. We definitely want to take the time to help people, but if you don't want to be helped and you don't want to pay attention, please don't ask. Do it when you're ready.
Great. And it doesn't hurt to repeat that advice and reinforce it because it's great stuff. All right, so students, we have our 3 guests here, so feel free to pop in the chat, any more questions or take yourself off mic. And once again, this time is for you to ask any questions you have about networking. Okay, it looks like, oh yes, here we go. So a question from Hidenobu. Okay, great. So he says, I believe data contributes a lot to the sports industry nowadays. Could you share some thoughts or experiences in your job? So your data is becoming a bigger part of the industry. And so if you're able to maybe share how data, the emphasis on data has impacted your particular thoughts or your particular jobs, I should say.
Well, if we have any math or data science majors on the call or whatever, it's definitely a burgeoning industry in sports. And I think it started off with anybody in baseball, basketball kind of operations on the sports side, but on the business side, I can vouch for the fact that is front and center in a lot of different ways right now. I guess, one example I'll share with you guys is, when I first got into the industry, and really not even that long ago, maybe like 5-6 years ago, when we were talking about sales campaigns, a lot of it was just, hey, sales guy, sales woman, get out there and find out your prospects, see what you can, dredge up and go after them. Now it's a lot more structured campaigns. When you do get sales, assessing where those people are coming from. If I'm running 5 different sales campaigns across 5 different industries, what industries are most buying our product, right? What is the average spend on each of those sales within that industry? So, all that data helps you become a smarter person. Doesn't always work out that way, but the more ammunition you have, the better equipped you are to attack it and have better success.
Good stuff. Anybody else, Carly or Martina, you have any thoughts on that question? If not, we'll move on.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as Craig. So absolutely, I totally agree. I think for us, it's more of lead source. So what lead sources are being pulled, ticket pricing. So I've had a unique experience here at the Clippers. We went from kind of like selling our opponents, hey, we're playing the Golden State Warriors, to acquiring 2 superstars in Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. So for that, like, difference in ticket pricing, difference in where you see a lot of our new members and other people like those spending money and upgrading. And then also you see, just like I said, the businesses, it impacts those as well, like the B2B calls and even our everyday consumer. So it impacts the whole thing. It's great though. Once you get good lead sources and different things like that, then you can really hit the ground rolling, but very closely connected.
Okay, cool. Thank you. All right, so we are almost at time. And so I want to give Craig, Carly, and Martina a chance to, oh, it looks like Carly has to go. Okay, so I'm going to give Craig and Martina a chance to share any parting words of advice, anything you want to share about networking that you haven't had a chance to touch on.
No, I'm thankful that you reached out to me and I had this opportunity to share with you guys, and you guys can connect with me on LinkedIn as well. And I can be of help. I know Clippers, we're always looking for new inside sales reps to, kick off their career. So if there's any way I can help you or throw you a lob basketball analogy, then please feel free to shoot me a message, and would love to help you guys out. But I'm thankful that you guys invited me. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Martina. Great to have you. And Craig, how about you?
Yeah, I appreciate the invite too, Ron. It's always good to see faces in the industry and to make connections. So similar to Martina, please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. Happy to connect with anyone. Happy to set up any informational interviews. whatever I can do to help you. I know I got a lot of help along the way. Usually everyone does. So if I can repay that in any way, shape, or form, please reach out to me and let me know. And again, thanks for the invite. It was a pleasure.
Certainly. Well, thank you both, for all of your wisdom that you shared, and certainly for carving out time from your busy schedules on the Friday afternoon, too. So definitely appreciate it, and I'm certainly looking forward to staying in touch and having you all involved in some more of our projects. So students, thank you for joining. Hope you found a lot of value out of this event, whether you're on either the first or second session or both. And so, as I mentioned earlier, feel free to spread the wealth. There are some of your peers who may have really wanted to be here, but weren't able to for a good reason. So, let them know about some of the great stuff that you've heard today. So we will continue to put out content like this. And so in the next few days, you're going to get an email from me with links to several interviews with several sports industry professionals. And so we did a round of interviews a couple of weeks ago. We put those out there. And so I had some students interview, I think about 20 or 21 additional industry professionals. And so those will be going out on YouTube. And also we're putting together another booklet, and this is going to be a collection of career wisdom from a number of folks in the sports industry too. So more great content to come. And it's just a good reminder to you all what a great group of folks we have working in the industry who do want to invest in your career. All right, and my wife also put in the chat to my YouTube channel. Thank you, honey. So she's on top of it. So definitely go ahead and check out my YouTube channel. You'll see lots of these interviews. All right, folks. So thank you again. Have a wonderful rest of your Friday afternoon and weekend, and we'll be in touch.